July is when most lawns start falling apart, and it usually has nothing to do with the heat itself. It's about the habits people keep doing out of routine, the same watering schedule, the same mowing height, the same fertilizer routine they used in April, applied to conditions that have completely changed. Grass under heat stress behaves differently than grass in cooler months, and a lot of the advice that works in spring actually speeds up damage in the middle of summer. None of this requires expensive equipment or a professional service. It just requires understanding what your grass actually needs when temperatures climb and rainfall gets unpredictable, and adjusting a handful of habits that most people never think to change once summer sets in. Before we get into it, if you want a complete system for cutting your lawn care costs without sacrificing results, the book linked in the description and pinned in the comments covers everything about the lawn. Our readers are saving an average of $1,000 a year in lawn care costs. Every video here is built around the same goal: spend less and get a better lawn. Subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. Now let's get back to the video. Fertilizing a stressed lawn in July can do more harm than good, and this trips up a lot of well-meaning homeowners. The instinct is that a lawn looking tired or pale needs feeding, but nitrogen-heavy fertilizer pushes grass to put energy into new leaf growth at exactly the moment the plant is already struggling to manage heat and water loss. That extra growth demand increases the plant's water requirements, right when it's least able to meet them, and it can actually burn the grass if soil moisture is low when the fertilizer is applied. The salts in most fertilizer formulas draw moisture out of the surrounding soil, and in a lawn that's already dry, that process pulls water away from the roots instead of feeding them, which is how you end up with fertilizer burn that looks almost identical to drought damage. For cool season grasses, most of the serious fertilizing should happen in early spring and again in fall when the grass is actively growing and better able to use the nutrients. During summer, cool season grasses like fescue and bluegrass are essentially in survival mode, not growth mode, so pushing them to produce new leaf tissue works against what the plant is naturally trying to do. If you fertilize in summer at all, use a slow-release lower nitrogen product and apply it right before or after rainfall, never during a drought or heat advisory. Warm season grasses handle summer fertilizing better since that's their active growing season. But even then, applying during an extended dry spell without adequate irrigation afterward is asking for trouble. It also helps to actually read the nitrogen percentage on the bag, rather than assuming any fertilizer labeled for summer use is automatically safe. A lower first number on the fertilizer label, generally under 20, paired with a slow-release formula, spreads nitrogen delivery out over weeks instead of dumping it all at once. When in doubt, skip the July fertilizer application entirely and focus on water and mowing height instead. A lawn that's properly watered and cut at the right height will usually recover its color on its own without any additional feeding, and adding fertilizer to an already stressed lawn tends to slow recovery rather than speed it up. Grubs, chinch bugs, and sod webworms tend to do their most damage during July and August, and by the time most people notice, the infestation is already established. The tricky part is that early pest damage looks almost identical to drought stress, patches of grass turning brown or yellow, which leads a lot of homeowners to just water more and wait, while the actual problem keeps spreading underground or at the soil surface. Grubs in particular feed on grass roots just below the surface, which means the visible damage on top is often weeks behind what's actually happening underground. A simple way to tell the difference is the tug test. Grab a small patch of the brown grass and pull. If it lifts up easily with little resistance, like pulling a loose carpet, that's a strong sign grubs have eaten through the root system, since healthy roots would hold the grass firmly in place. It also helps to check for secondary signs, since grub-damaged lawns often attract birds, skunks, or raccoons digging at the turf, looking for an easy meal. And that kind of animal activity showing up suddenly in July is usually a signal worth investigating, rather than ignoring. For chinch bugs, which tend to show up in hot, sunny areas of the lawn, particularly along driveways and sidewalks, where soil temperatures run hottest, a soapy water test works well. Mix a few tablespoons of dish soap into a gallon of water, pour it over a suspicious patch, and watch for small bugs surfacing within a few minutes. Sod webworms leave a different signature, small brown patches with visible notches chewed into individual grass blades, and they're most active at night, so checking the lawn with a flashlight after dark can confirm what you're dealing with. Catching these infestations in July while they're still localized is far easier and cheaper to treat than waiting until the damage spreads across the whole yard. By late summer, when replacing dead turf becomes the only real option left, a dull mower blade doesn't cut grass cleanly, it tears it. Torn grass tips turn brown and ragged looking within a day or two, and those ragged wounds are easier entry points for fungal infections, which are already more common in the humid conditions of July. From a distance, a lawn cut with a dull blade can take on a slightly grayish or brownish cast a day or two after mowing, and a lot of people assume that's heat stress or a watering problem when it's actually just blade damage healing over. Most people don't think about blade sharpness until the lawn starts looking rough, but by then the damage has usually been accumulating for weeks. Sharpening or replacing mower blades once or twice during the growing season, especially heading into peak summer mowing, keeps every cut clean, and it's a 5-minute job that most hardware stores can do for a small fee if you don't want to do it yourself. Mowing wet grass compounds the problem. Wet clippings clump together instead of dispersing evenly, which can smother patches of grass underneath and create damp piles that invite fungal growth. Wet grass also causes mower wheels to compact the soil more than they would on a dry lawn, and it increases the chance of the mower slipping or tearing rather than cutting cleanly. There's also a practical side effect worth mentioning. Wet clippings clog mower decks and discharge chutes far more than dry ones, which means uneven cutting and clumps left behind that can smother the grass below them within a day if not raked up. Waiting a few hours after morning dew or rainfall for the grass to dry before mowing is a small adjustment that noticeably improves how the lawn looks and recovers afterward, and it's usually as simple as pushing your mowing session back to late morning instead of first thing after sunrise. Quick reminder before we continue. If this is helping, subscribing costs nothing and keeps these lawn care breakdowns coming. July is when a lot of summer annual weeds like crabgrass, spurge, and foxtail finish their growth cycle and start producing seed heads. If those weeds aren't addressed before they go to seed, a single mist patch can spread thousands of new seeds across the lawn, setting up an even worse weed problem the following year. A single crabgrass plant left unchecked through July can produce tens of thousands of seeds by the end of the season, and those seeds don't just stay put. Mowing and foot traffic spread them across the entire yard within weeks. Post-emergent herbicides are still effective in July for actively growing weeds, but timing and grass health matter. Applying herbicide to a lawn that's already stressed from heat or drought can cause additional damage to the grass itself, so it's worth watering the lawn well in the days before treatment and avoiding application during the hottest part of the day, generally treating in early morning or early evening when temperatures are below 85 degrees. Reading the product label matters more in summer than any other season, since a lot of herbicide formulas explicitly warn against application above certain temperature thresholds precisely because of how easily they can scorch already stressed turf. For smaller infestations, hand-pulling weeds before they flower is often the most reliable option, since it removes the plant without any risk to the surrounding grass, and it's particularly effective for spurge, which tends to grow in isolated patches rather than spreading evenly across the yard, keeping the mower height higher. As mentioned later in this video also plays a direct role here, since taller grass shades the soil and makes it harder for weed seeds to germinate in the first place. Addressing weeds in July before they seed out is meaningfully easier than trying to deal with a full infestation the following spring, when a single summer's worth of dropped seed can take 2 or 3 seasons of consistent treatment to fully clear out. Scalping your lawn in July is one of the fastest ways to stress it out. A lot of people mow shorter in summer thinking it means fewer mowing sessions and a cleaner look. The opposite happens. Grass blades are where photosynthesis occurs, and shorter blades mean less surface area to produce energy for the plant. During cooler months, grass can tolerate a shorter cut, because it isn't fighting heat and moisture loss at the same time. In July, cutting below the recommended height for your grass type removes the plant's ability to shade its own root zone, which lets soil temperatures spike and moisture evaporate faster. Research from several university turf programs has shown that soil under taller grass can run 10 to 15 degrees cooler than soil under closely mowed turf on the same hot afternoon, which directly affects how much water the lawn loses to evaporation each day. Cool season grasses like Kentucky bluegrass, fescue, and ryegrass generally do best kept between 3 and 4 inches during summer. Warm season grasses like Bermuda or zoysia can go a bit shorter, but even those varieties benefit from staying on the taller end of their range once temperatures consistently hit the 90s. Taller grass also shades out weed seeds before they can germinate, so raising your mower height in July often reduces weed pressure as a side effect, tying directly back to the weed problem covered earlier in this video. The general rule is the 1/3 rule. Never remove more than 1/3 of the blade length in a single mowing. If your lawn got away from you and grew tall, whether from vacation, rain delays, or just a busy week, bring it down gradually over 2 or 3 sessions instead of scalping it in one pass, since a sudden drastic cut shocks the plant even if the total height reduction seems reasonable on paper. Before the last 2 sections, if you've made it this far, subscribing means you won't miss the next lawn care video. This is probably the most common mistake homeowners make in July, and it comes from good intentions. People see their lawn looking dry and respond by running the sprinklers every single day for 10 or 15 minutes. That schedule feels responsible, but it actually trains the grass to develop shallow roots. When water is always available near the surface, roots have no reason to grow deeper into the soil where moisture is more stable during hot stretches. Over several weeks of daily light watering, root systems can actually shrink compared to a lawn watered less frequently but more deeply, which leaves the shallow-rooted lawn far more vulnerable the moment watering stops, whether that's because of a vacation, a watering restriction, or simply forgetting to run the sprinklers for a few days. Deep, Infrequent watering does the opposite, watering 2 to 3 times a week, but for longer sessions, roughly enough to soak 6 to 8 inches into the soil, encourages roots to chase that moisture downward. Deeper roots make grass far more resilient during heat waves and short dry spells, because the plant has access to water reserves that shallow-rooted lawns simply don't have. This becomes especially noticeable during a heat wave. A lawn with deep roots can often go 5 to 7 days without water and still hold its color, while a shallow-rooted lawn watered daily starts showing stress within a day or two of any interruption. A simple way to check how much water you're actually applying is to place a few empty tuna cans or a rain gauge around the yard while the sprinklers run. Most lawns need about 1 to 1.5 inches of water per week total, whether from rainfall or irrigation, and it's better delivered in 2 sessions than 7 small ones. It's also worth checking your soil type, since sandy soil drains faster and may need slightly more frequent watering than the 2 to 3 session guideline, while clay-heavy soil holds moisture longer and can go with less frequent watering even than that. So a quick soil check is worth doing before locking in a fixed schedule. Timing matters almost as much as volume. Watering in the middle of the afternoon, when the sun is highest and temperatures peak, wastes a significant amount of water to evaporation before it ever reaches the root zone. Some estimates put midday evaporation losses as high as 30 to 50% depending on wind and heat. That means you could be running your sprinklers for 20 minutes and only delivering the equivalent of 10. And on a windy afternoon, a portion of that water never even lands on the lawn, drifting instead onto driveways and sidewalks where it does nothing for the grass at all. Watering in the evening seems like a logical fix, but it introduces a different problem. Grass blades that stay wet overnight create ideal conditions for fungal diseases like brown patch and dollar spot, both of which spread quickly in humid, stagnant air, since fungal spores need extended periods of moisture on the leaf surface to germinate and take hold. A lawn watered every evening through a humid July stretch can develop visible fungal patches within a week or two, even if every other part of the lawn care routine is being done correctly. The best window is early morning, generally between 5 and 9 before the sun is intense enough to cause rapid evaporation, but with enough daylight left afterward for the grass blades to dry out completely. This timing also happens to align with when most municipal water pressure is at its highest, since fewer households are running water at that hour, which means sprinkler systems often perform more efficiently in early morning than they do later in the day. This single adjustment, just moving your watering schedule to early morning, can meaningfully reduce both water waste and disease risk without changing anything else about your routine. And it's usually as simple as resetting the start time on an irrigation timer. Most July lawn damage isn't caused by one dramatic mistake. It's the accumulation of small habits, fertilizing at the wrong moment, ignoring early pest signs, mowing a little too short, watering a little too often and too shallow, that stack up over a few weeks of heat. None of these mistakes look serious on their own in the moment they happen, which is exactly why they're so easy to overlook until the lawn is already showing real damage. Adjusting even 2 or 3 of these habits, raising your mower height, switching to deep infrequent watering, and watering in the early morning will make a noticeable difference by the end of the month, often within just a week or 2 of making the change.